Alright, let's take a look at this contribution margin, fixed cost, break-even, and some other measure problem. It's problem 18-5B. Washington Corporation has collected the following information after its first year of sales. Net sales were $2,400,000 on 200,000 units. Selling expense $360,000, and they tell us it was 30% variable and 70% fixed. Direct materials were $626,500. And direct labor was $507,500. Administrative expenses $420,000 and 40% were variable, 60% fixed. Manufacturing overhead $540,000, 50% variable and 50% fixed. Top management has asked you to do a CVP analysis so that it can make plans for the coming year. It's projected that unit sales will increase by 20%. So let's tackle part A first. 1. Compute the contribution margin for the current year and the projected year, and then the fixed cost for the current year. And then on part B, we need to compute the break-even point in units and sales dollars for the current year. Alright, now to save time for the demo, I've worked this ahead of time, so let's just bring some items to light. We jot in the net sales, and on part 1, we're only concerned with the current year. So they told us that sales were $2,400,000. Next, we need to identify the variable costs, and when we subtract out the variable cost, we'll be able to compute the contribution margin. So let's bring all of these to light. And they told us direct material cost were $626,500, direct labor $507,500. I'll just bring all of these to light. And you'll see that for the two items where we had mixed cost, we need to take the dollar amount they gave us, the $540,000 for manufacturing overhead, and multiply it times 50%. You see my calculation here. And then we take $420 of admin cost and multiply it by 40%. And when we do that, we get these numbers that you see put in here. Okay, so we've got a total variable cost of $1,680,000. Now I'm going to slide and we'll lose a little bit of the screen, but that's okay because at this point we're able to come up with a contribution margin equal to $720,000. Okay, compute the break-even. Wait, it also says compute the projected year, so let's do that next. Projected year, we just take everything times 1.2. Let me bring this to light here. I would take the $2,400,000 and multiply it times 1.2. And we would multiply whatever that cell is times 1.2 for all the variable costs. So we multiply direct materials, direct labor, and all I'm doing is cutting and pasting, okay? So I'm just cutting and pasting from that formula all the way down. And if I do that all the way down to admin cost, then I can sum. I'll copy this over, which just sums from above, right? And we can compute the contribution margin by taking the 2880 minus the 2016. And I better bring that to light so you can see it, okay? So I got 864. All right, and by the way, I didn't have a formula here. I just had the hard-coded number, but I'll enter it there. This one actually is the formula. Okay, so that takes care of number 1, where we've computed the contribution margin for the current year and the projected year. All right, now let's slide down and work a little bit on fixed costs. We'll lose a little bit of the data, but hopefully you've got it memorized. But we'll get to it if we have to. Okay, current year and next year, and let me just capitalize the Y. And next year, we now have to take the manufacturing cost times the other 50%, right? And that becomes, let me bring this to light here, equal 540,000, times 50%. Okay? And next year, that remains the same. It's a fixed cost. So I will just reference that cell and copy it over. Okay, then we need to bring in selling expense, which is 360,000 times 70%. So if we enter that, we'd enter 360,000 times 70%. I got 252,000, and of course, the fixed portion would remain the same as well. So I'll copy this formula down. And the last one is the fixed portion of the admin costs. So if I bring that to light, that should be equal to 420,000 times 60%. Okay, so I've got 252,000, and again, that 252 will remain the same next year because it's fixed costs. So we underline it, then we can just sum. So I'm going to enter the sum formula now. It was hard-coded, but that's because I had the answer in before we started. And then copy this, we get 774. And that takes care of our total fixed cost. So we've now taken care of Part A, Parts 1 and 2. Next, we'll compute the break-even point in units and sales dollars for the current year. Okay, now you see the screen has moved a little bit, and what I've done is I've hidden some rows. So we just have the contribution margin and the total fixed costs that we calculated earlier. And I've also dropped in the formulas to determine break-even points in units and dollars. So break-even point in units, you take fixed cost divided by the unit contribution margin. To determine break-even in dollars, take fixed cost and divide it by the contribution margin ratio. And this is all aimed at answering Part B, to compute break-even point in units and sales dollars for the current year. Alright, so to calculate Part B, the break-even points, we first have to figure out what's the unit selling price. And rather than work this, I've just provided that on the screen. So I'm reading this row right here. Unit selling price is 2,400,000 divided by the 200,000 units, and we calculate $12 as the unit selling price. To determine the unit variable cost, we take the unit variable cost we calculated earlier, and I apologize that you can't see it on the screen, but you could pause and go back to see that we did come up with a total of $1,680,000. We divide it by 200,000 units, we come up with $840. So the contribution margin is the $12 less the $840, or $3.60. And to compute the contribution margin ratio, we would take the contribution margin dollars per unit divided by the selling price per unit. And when we take $360 divided by $12, we come up with 30 cents. So with that knowledge, we now can compute the break-even. And I think what I'll do is slide this down and then just sort of put this right here. So break-even unit in units, we take the units divided by the fixed cost, 774, and we come up with unit contribution margin of 360. Or let me say that another way. Break-even points in units is 215,000 when we take 774,000 and divide it by the unit contribution margin that we just determined up above. Then, to determine break-even point in dollars, we take that fixed cost and divide it by the 30 cents or 30% contribution margin. I would read that as a percent. And you come up with break-even point in dollars is 2,580,000. Okay, now the screen has moved a little bit as well as we tackle C and D. C says the company has a target net income of $620,000. What's the required sales in dollars for the company to meet? So the way we solve that is we add the target net income, the $620,000, to the fixed cost. And here's the formula right here. And then we divide it by the contribution margin. And when we do that, we come up with $4,646,667. That's the sales dollars required to meet that target net income. Then Part D says, if the company meets its target net income number, and I'll move the mouse off to the side, by what percentage could its sales fall before it's operating at a loss? And this is the margin of safety ratio. And to calculate the margin of safety ratio, we take expected sales, which we just calculated above, and we subtract out the break-even sales and divide it by the expected sales. So we come up with a margin safety ratio here of 44.5%. And that's this problem, everyone. Thank you.